What's going on, everybody? Welcome to today's episode of Dream Rare Podcast. I'm honored to have my favorite guest, and no disrespect to the other guests because we love you too, but it is without a doubt G. Edward Griffin is my favorite guest. Thanks for being here.
Oh, well, thank you. Um, I don't know why I earned that, but I'm glad to have that honor. So thank you.
Because you're epic. You're an American legend, an author, and I just think one of the coolest people in independent media American history. So
Oh, how about that? Well, I'm probably going to disappoint you today. So go easy on me, okay?
no doubt. I mean, not excuse me, no doubt. No chance of that. I know you're gonna crush. And today's Dream Rare Podcast starts now. It's the Dream Rare Podcast. Welcome to the show. The way to get the news at the desk or on the road. Let's go. God is great and success in our control. The world is crazy, but we get better from obstacles. Yeah. That's the theme song and that's the podcast. So thank you again for being here, G. Edward. I appreciate your time.
Well, thanks for inviting me.
My favorite guest. I'm pumped. One day we did it last time. The second day we interviewed was my birthday. And that was a great birthday present. Great way to spend the day.
How about that? Wow.
First question. I'm going to get right into it. You've been around for a while and you've been doing media research. We've talked a bunch about everything you've done in your life. Can you tell me how censorship has changed over the years? And maybe you could remember the first time you saw any sort of censorship in America and how it's different now, and if any has happened to you.
Well, yeah, that's a pretty easy question because way back in the Pleistocene era, when I started doing all of this, censorship was present, but it wasn't recognized. It wasn't out in the open like it is now. And that's because it wasn't really censorship. It was, I guess, what they call shadow banning today. It's just that people with the truth, the people who are on the side of the issues that I am on, we were just finding that the doors were closed to us in terms of mass media. And of course, in those days, we didn't have alternative media. So it was either the mass media or no media at all, pretty much. You had your mailing list. We used to send our reports and our catalogs and all of our things that we wanted people to read. We sent them through the mail, and sometimes even that didn't get delivered. But it was not recognized by most people as out and out censorship. Today, of course, it's quite different. I don't remember the first time that it was really brought right out in the open and everybody said, "Yep, we are not going to carry your message because we disapprove of it," or somebody else disapproves of it, doesn't meet the standard. That happened fairly recently, just a couple of years ago. I don't really remember, but it's a recent phenomenon for America anyway. I guess many other countries have experienced that, and they never got off of censorship. So censorship is no big deal to a lot of people around the world, but to those of us here in America, it's a very big deal.
Did it seem Orwellian to you the first time? Because I know I could think of my first time that you get that message, whether it's we took your video down or we don't want people to hear what you said.
Mm-hmm.
Was it weird the first time it hit you? Because it definitely was to me.
Well, it was weird, although I could see it coming because I knew that who was in charge, and I knew that the corporations were no longer what they used to be. They used to be that the large corporations were in business to make money, and that was primarily it. And over the decades, I could see that shift coming as a result of the corporations consolidating with each other and forming into partnerships with the government. And I could see that the evolution was in the direction of the classic definition of fascism, which is the combination of the private and the public economy and the society. They all became one. And we certainly have seen that now. It is one. And I can't think of a better way to describe it except the other day I was being interviewed, and all of a sudden somebody asked me a similar question. Well, what do you think about how does the government react to what the corporations are doing and all that stuff? And I found myself explaining it this way: it's all one nowadays. It might be one big building, but if you can envision a building with, say, 4 sides on it, and there's a door, it looks like a main door on each of the sides, and each over the door there's a sign. One door says government, the other door says corporations, and so forth. And and you see people going in, and they sometimes stand on the steps, and they do video interviews on the steps or somewhere where the pillars are, and they're speaking for the banks. And then you notice a couple of months later, they're at the other door that says government, and it's the same guy, but now he's head of the Federal Reserve System, which appears to be government anyway. So we see these people going through the revolving doors, how we used to describe it. They work for the regulatory agencies part of the time, and then they retire, and then they become hired over as the leaders and the administrators of the government agencies and so forth. So anyway, it's all in. Once you're inside that building, these people mingle around, and they talk together. They all have common goals. And it's no longer just making money. I'm sure making money is pretty important, but these people have pretty well captured the money making machine. They don't even have to. Well, they don't have to earn money. Let's put it that way. They can just make it by printing it or issuing it as credit and that kind of thing. So they have all the money they need because they make the bloody stuff. So now they've set their visions for something bigger than just money. Money, after all, is nothing more or less than power. I and others still use the expression money and power. Well, it's the same thing because the only reason people want money is because it gives them power. And
Mm.
there are other kinds of power, of course, but money is the most ubiquitous, and it's the most convertible to anything. You can always purchase, if you have enough money, you can purchase people to do whatever you want to be done. So that's why money is the key to all of this, and that's why the banking system, especially as it's focused on the central banks and with their coordination at the Bank of International Settlements in Basel, Switzerland, it's consolidated there. You see this giant banking cartel, global cartel. They're really at the heart of everything because without being able to create money out of literally nothing, or a little bit worse than that, out of debt, they can loan things out to people. It's really a gift because they don't expect it to be paid back. But on the books, it appears to be a loan. And then they collect interest on this loan, and but it gives them the power to purchase the services and products of anybody in the world because they have unlimited access to money. So they're at the center of all of this, but we mustn't forget that now in today's world, it's all one big fascist type of political and economic structure.
I like that you put it that way because, during COVID, sometimes I would say socialism and people would say it's fascism. I said, you know what? I don't care what you call it. As long as you know that it's wrong and as long as you know they're in on it, then we could
Yeah,
get along, right? I'll call it that. You call it this. We
that's
both
right.
know what's going
Mhm.
on.
Yeah, that's true. The names are not important, but it is important to understand that socialism and fascism and communism and all these other isms that we don't like, most of us don't like, are merely variants of the same thing, and that's collectivism. And until we start to use the right words, it gets to be confusing. And we think, oh, those fascists or those Nazis or those communists or the New Dealers or the Republicans or the Democrats. And you look at these people and they all believe the same thing. They fight with each other for dominance. They want to be the big cheese that runs the whole show. But they believe in the same things and they use the same tactics. Their vocabulary might be different because they're appealing to a different mindset. But once they're in office, if you're talking about the political side, once they're in office, they all do the same thing. So their ideology is correctly called collectivism, and the core of that idea is that the group is more important than the individual, and that the individual must be sacrificed if necessary for the greater good of the greater number. That's the excuse that all these people use. It's for the greater good. And Lenin put it pretty well years ago. Vladimir Ilyich Lenin over in the USSR said, if you want to make an omelet, you have to crack a few eggs. And that's how it goes. You want the greater omelet, the greater good of the omelet, you have to sacrifice the eggs. So he applied that to social and political orders. If you want to change society for the good, which was to bring it to communism, you have to kill a few million people. We'll call those eggs, and you just have to do it to bring about the greater good for the greater number. And that's the same argument that FDR used when he pretended like the U.S. didn't know that the Japanese were coming to attack Pearl Harbor. They made it easy for the Japanese to attack. invited them, literally cleared the oceans so that there were no commercial ships out there in the ocean. They knew that the Armada was coming from Japan to Pearl Harbor, and they didn't want fishermen out there to call in and say, "Hey guys, I see something. The whole Japanese Navy is out here going toward Pearl Harbor. Something's going down here." They didn't want that. They wanted to be a surprise attack. And Washington was scheduled. Okay, why did they do that? Well, in later years, I think it was Stettinius who wrote his diaries, and he said, "We did that because it was necessary to bring the United States into war as a victim rather than an aggressor, because we had to get into the war because it was for the greater good of mankind, to put an end to all of this sort of totalitarianism." So he phrased it in such a way, you see, it was okay to pretend like we were victims. It was okay to sacrifice 4,000 sailors of our own boys in Pearl Harbor. It was a terrible thing, but we had to crack a few eggs to make the omelet. Well, I'm maybe taking too long to talk about this, but this is the idea that you find behind fascism, Nazism, communism, socialism, all of these isms, and they all believe the same thing. And I'm sorry to say that when we come to America, we look at the Republican Party and the Democrat Party, they talk a different story, but they both follow that dictum that I just described, some more openly than others. But when you stand back for the big picture and see how the parade has gone over 100 years, it makes no difference who's in office. It makes maybe a little blip difference, but it all levels out. It's a constant growth of government and the constant decrease of individual liberty over all of those years, and both parties have supported it. So until we understand that this is really a war between collectivism and the alternate to that, or the opposite of that, is called individualism, we're never going to win the war because we don't even know what our ideologies are. So I like to talk about that because I've prepared a report on collectivism versus individualism, which is the gem of this idea. And if anybody's interested in knowing at least how I see it, I would welcome them if they just send in a request to receive it, and I'll send them a free download if they want to do it. And if I may give that email for them, it's realityzone, excuse me, realityzone.com.chasm, CHASM, realityzone.com.chasm. Chasm, of course, is the name of the report, The Chasm, which is the big divide between individualism on one side and collectivism on the other. And that is the only meaningful political discussion in the world today that really means something. All the rest of those words don't really mean anything. You can't define, to everyone's satisfaction, you cannot define the difference between communism and fascism or Americanism or anything. You just can't define it because it's deliberately confusing so that nobody gets a hold of it. But once you start talking about the principles of collectivism on the one side and individualism, they're always opposite to each other. And all of a sudden, everything becomes very, very clear.
Appreciate you. You're allowed to talk here. That's why I brought you here. No interruptions. I appreciate it. And your work ethic is incredible to still be putting out stuff, giving people free stuff. We appreciate it. I want to play this clip real quick. And just to let you know how this works, when I play the clip, we'll both be muted, but we don't have to touch anything. It'll come right back on afterwards because it's a little confusing. And this is you, allegedly, it might be a conspiracy theory, but 1969 saying that they were using certain words. It's only a short clip of that, but basically calling people names to put a foul taste in their mouth so their characters were smeared. I want to play this and just get your reaction because anytime I share this on Twitter, it's still relevant. And I think the initiative you were reading was 1943 and the video was 1969, I believe. But I'll play the clip and then the floor is yours to explain what's going on here. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
In 1943, the following directive was issued from party headquarters to all communists in the United States. It read, "When certain obstructionists become too irritating, label them after suitable buildups as fascist or Nazi or anti-Semitic, and use the prestige of anti-fascist and tolerance organizations to discredit them. In the public mind, constantly associate those who oppose us with those names which already have a bad smell. The association will, after enough repetition, become fact in the public mind."
So what's going on there, and how is that still almost completely the exact same structure the media is using to this day?
Well, it is exactly the same structure. And of course, I don't know if the audience. Oh, by the way, that was a terrible image. There are better images out there.
Sorry
We'll have
about
to,
that. I
we'll
probably
have,
got
we'll
it
have,
repurposed.
I'll have to get you a more clear image.
Please.
Anyway, that's not important. I just had to laugh. It looked like I was underwater. But no, in those days, a little backstory on that. I had become aware of what was really going on in the world starting in 1960. So first thing I had decided to do was to figure out what the heck was going on. Who were these people, the communists? They'd taken over large chunks of the world, Russia and China and Cuba and some countries in South America. What was this? What was this all about? So I was working for a large corporation, an insurance company downtown in Los Angeles at the time as kind of a junior executive. I was trying to climb the corporate ladder, I thank God I got out of that. But anyway, so I was downtown one day and I had a luncheon appointment with a client who also was downtown. And I had some extra time before the appointment was to come up. So I went into the library and I started getting some books on this. And I got the idea that, well, maybe I should go right to the source. I should go to the Communist Library. So I looked it up, and sure enough, there was a communist bookstore in Los Angeles. I think it's still there, called the People's Bookshop. And so I went down and I started hanging out with the comrades. Of course, I'm dressed in a business suit and a tie and everything. They're looking very suspiciously at me. And but eventually they figured I was probably a good recruit, and they'd like to get people in the corporate world recruited also. So they invited me to they called it a study group. I knew it was a recruiting uh, organization. They were going to propagandize me and give me books to read and all that stuff, which I did because I wanted to learn what they really believed. And I did. I stuck with it for a couple of months, and I bought a lot of books and I read them. And that was interesting because I discovered as I went back and talked to these guys that they hadn't read the books. They were selling them, and they were motivated pretty much by the slogans, like from each according to his ability, to each according to his need, from Karl Marx. Well, that sounds pretty good, and then the other slogan, put an end to racism and war and all that kind of stuff. And workers of the world unite, throw off your chains of your capitalist exploiters. So they were operating on slogans which had a lot of energy to them, but they hadn't read the books. But I read the books, and when I would ask them questions, they couldn't answer. And so anyway, I discovered at that time that I knew what their ideology was. And I discovered, I don't want to take too much time on this, but this might be informative to your audience. I discovered the difference between Marxism and communism. And I thought it was pretty much the same. But no, it's not the same. If you read the communist literature, they always, at least the older original literature, they always made a difference between um, a Marxist and a Marxist-Leninist. Okay, it sounds like words. Well, Marxist or Marxist-Leninist is sort of the two names of the intellectual leaders of the communist movement. So what? Well, the so what is very, very important. Marx was the originator of the idea of the modern idea of collectivism in the form of communism and socialism, as he coined it too. And but in all of the countries that ever were taken over by communism, none of them were ever taken over by Marxists. They were all taken over by Marxists, Leninists. So who were they? Well, they are Marxists to start with. They had read, the works of Karl Marx, Das Kapital and the Communist Manifesto, and they believed in the principles of collectivism. They called it socialism, and they were theorists. They were academics. They were debaters. They were intelligent people. Uh, who were the Leninists? Totally different people. They read the works of Karl Marx, but they said, look, this is too academic. You're never going to conquer the world with ideas unless you convert the ideas into action, unless you come to power. And that's where Lenin added a very important flavor to this whole movement. He was the founder of the Communist Party. And that was like a militant or military organization, except it was in the beginning, it was meant to operate underground in secret and so forth. But he was concerned not with the ideas so much as the techniques and the strategies for coming to power. And in his collected works of Lenin, which was quite an extensive library, I've forgotten how many volumes there were, but it was a lot. He was very he wrote a lot. Let's just put it that way. He had a lot of literature, and he wrote them in essays, and they were in the collected works. Well, I read them all, and I was kind of boring after a while because I found out that most of what he was writing was pretty much the same thing over and over and over again. What was that same thing? It was this. He would, I'm going to condense it now. He would say, this is the whole idea. Comrades, it makes no difference how much you know, how good you are at debate. Makes no difference if you know all the names and dates and arguments and you win the debates. Nothing like that makes any difference at all. The only thing that makes a difference is to come to power. Come to power. And you can say anything. You don't have to sell Marxism to come to power. Sometimes, comrades, you have to pretend like you are anti-Marxist to come to power, because you have to get people to support you. So you can even be an anti-communist in order to come to power. And so, wow, isn't that interesting? And he would say things like, the reason this is so, comrades, because once you come to power and people have trusted you and you are now the big man or part of the party, if they disagree with you, you can shoot them legally. I mean, he wrote this stuff. He was a very quotable guy. He wrote things like, promises are like pie crusts made to be broken. This is Lenin. Okay, so once you understand, Leninism is based on this concept of coming to power no matter what. I had to go into one more round. He would say things like, okay, if we go into a country, comrades, and we want to convert that, we want to take it over, and we want to destroy the old system and get rid of all the traditions, and we want to install internationalism, and give away all their national, their culture, their legal system, everything of that nationalistic quality. Do you go and preach those things to the masses who love their culture and their traditions? No. You pretend like you believe what they do, so they will like you and they will support you and they will make you their leader. Now, once you're in power, you can bring into effect all of the things we want, and they can't do anything about it. And even though they can see you doing it, they still remember you as their leader and they will follow you anyway. This is Lenin. Okay, that's important for Americans today to understand that, because that strategy has not changed at all. In fact, if anything, they polished it and perfected it to a fine quality today. And if people don't understand the concept of controlled opposition, they will never be able to understand the war that we're involved in. They certainly won't be able to win that war. Okay, now, having done all that, I got to thinking, gee, this communism thing is more complicated than I thought. I thought it was just a bunch of slogans. But no, once you get past Marxism and start talking about Marxism-Leninism, you're talking about strategies and tactics. And this is where the action really is. So I became curious. I said, well, what about this thing called fascism, Nazism? I should know about that too. So I couldn't find any fascist bookstores in town, but I did order the books. I got hold of Mussolini, some of his writings. I got hold of Hitler's Mein Kampf, and I read them. And here's what the surprise was. I discovered that everything that Hitler wrote also was written by Lenin and Marx. They believed exactly the same thing on every point. I made a list of 7 or 8 points that were the cornerstones of the ideology of Nazism and fascism. Now remember, Nazism is German for Nazi, meaning national, and Nazi is National Socialist Party in German. The Nazis were socialists first, but they had a special twist on it, as make it national socialism instead of international socialism, which the communists were advocating. But once you get past the words national or international, everything else is the same. It's socialism, which means it's collectivism. And they had no argument with each other. In fact, I discovered that some of the leading activists in the communist and Nazi parties would change sides. They would cross over, and they would serve either side perfectly. It was just a question of who was the object of their loyalty as a leader. So that shocked me, and I realized that all those 7 or 8 points that I had listed for Marx and Lenin were also common to Mussolini and Hitler. And I thought, well, isn't that interesting? And they didn't teach that to me in school. And the only difference is that they would fight against each other, of course, as the communists and the Nazis did. They fought like the devil, and hundreds of thousands of people were killed in that conflict, maybe 1 million or so. I don't know the numbers. It was horrible manslaughter. But they weren't fighting over differences of opinion and ideology. They were fighting over territory. Who was going to be the big cheese? Who was going to rule and be the ruler, and who was going to be the servant? Once I got that picture, my life changed. And now I realize this battle that we're in is much more complicated, has many more nuances than the major media or the educational system allowed me to know. So I had to go through that a little bit to tell you that how I got to realize that this is a battle between collectivism and individualism, because those are the only issues of the day, and they always have been, except that nobody even knew that there were such things as individualism versus collectivism. They were all trying to pick out, which side am I going to be on? The communist? Am I going to be a communist or a Nazi? That was our choice, remember? Am I a right winger or a left winger? I remember I went through that stage. I was concerned about the rise of communism, and I didn't see any fascists around, any Nazis, but I saw lots of commies, so I figured that was the enemy. And I didn't realize that at the very time that I was so concerned about the rise of communism in America, our own political leaders in America were becoming more and more like our enemy. They were adapting the principles of collectivism without using the name, in the name of fighting communism, in the name of fighting totalitarianism. They were adopting totalitarianism. And here we are at this late date, at the end of that cycle. We're living in the fruits of that process, of the results of that process. In the name of fighting tyranny, we have been building a tyrannical system of our own that is identical in every important ideological measure of that which belongs to our enemy. And now we're stuck with what to do about it.
Speaking of which, I grew up during the Bush era, I think junior, and I never liked Republicans. I thought they were lying about certain things, and the wars started expanding, but I was never fully a Democrat either. I kind of had an inkling that both parties were corrupt. You've been around, you are 92 years young, right?
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Incredible. Has there ever been a president in your lifetime that you felt like was outside the system, or now that you have all this wisdom, is there anyone that you think made a difference, or do you think they're all just puppets or the other side of the coin? Like you said, they'll get people to fight and pick sides, and maybe they're right about some things they think about, but then ultimately it all ends in the same destination.
Yeah, it tends to be that way, I believe. I'm glad you said in my lifetime, because if you had said ever from the beginning, it would have been hard too. But I think George Washington was right on spit spot. After that, it was downhill.
Okay.
Now I think Reagan probably was not knowledgeable enough to realize that he was probably captured by this force above politics. He probably was grateful to get financial funding for his presidency and so forth. I remember in his campaign, he was warning against the Council on Foreign Relations, for example, which is a very powerful not occult, but a secret operation in terms of devising strategies for building globalism and establishing the new world order based on the principles of collectivism. And so he said, well, we've got to oppose these people in the Council on Foreign Relations. They're bringing about the demise of America. He said that as a candidate, and there was no doubt in my mind he got hold of some literature and he found out what was going on. But after he was elected president, he loaded his cabinet with members of the Council on Foreign Relations. But nobody noticed because by that time, oh, we won. We got our men in the White House, and nobody was looking anymore. And I'm sure, I don't know, but I'm sure that President Reagan was probably the closest to the ideal that we would want, but he was a pushover for these professionals that he was up against. He was surrounded by them, and he had to depend on them for funding and for media support, and even probably for his own life. And but other than Reagan, I can't think of anybody that I would even bother having lunch with.
I got you. While we're on the topic, because I have a few other questions, but on this topic, you said Reagan campaigned well, and then he hired the Council of Foreign Relations. Trump had a similar strategy of drain the swamp, but then, pretty much every position from FDA, HHS, Secretary of State, pretty literally everything except for maybe one or two, they were the swamp. Why do you think that people do that? Do you think they come in with good intentions and just can't do it? Do you think they're always, I know Reagan was literally an actor, so are they more actors? Or do you think the pressure is just so real that they're going with good intentions and they just can't deliver?
Well, I don't really know. They have to speak for themselves on that. But my suspicion is that they don't get the support that they need in order to win an election unless they've made a deal. So to that extent, they know what they're doing. They may not like making the deal, but they made a deal. And it probably goes something like this. Oh, by the way, to bring this into focus, when President Trump was running as a candidate in the beginning, nobody thought he had a chance in the world of becoming president of the United States. He was considered to be a buffoon by most people, and an unpleasant one at that. And but I remember reading in the paper right after he had started his campaign, it wasn't front page stuff as it should have been. I forgot it was way in the back of the page of the paper, and it said that candidate Donald Trump spent the day with Kissinger to talk about his campaign. And I thought, what? Talk about Kissinger? Henry Kissinger, who is, people should know he's Rockefeller's bagman, which means he represents David Rockefeller in all negotiations where Rockefeller himself doesn't want to be seen publicly. He sends Kissinger out. He knows that. Anybody in politics knows that. So what did candidate Trump do and Henry Kissinger do that day they spent together in Kissinger's penthouse in New York? And I got to thinking, well, what could they do? And then I remembered that Trump had written a book in the beginning and given some speeches, and he said, you should vote for me because I'm a deal maker. I can make deals with anybody, he said. I get things done. I don't worry about ideas too much. I just get them done. He began to sound like Lenin, I don't worry about ideas. I get things done, and I can work with anybody. I make deals. And I thought, okay, I think I just figured out what was going on that day. A deal was struck, and it probably went something like this. Mr. Kissinger probably said, well, Mr. Trump, we like your spunk. We don't agree on everything, but we'd like to support you because we think you'd make a good president, and we have resources, as you know. We can provide a great deal of capital. We have great influence over the mass media of not only this country but the world, and we can see that publicity is favorable to you. And I think we can pretty well guarantee that we can put you into the White House. Does that interest you? And I'm sure Trump would probably say, are you kidding? Of course that interests me, because he always wanted to be president of the United States, he said, at some later time. And okay, well then all we ask in return is that you agree that when you are president, that you will consider our advice in terms of what appointments you make to the Supreme Court and to your cabinet and your choice of your generals and so forth. And that's all we ask. We will guarantee you we'll provide some suggestions for you that we would like you to consider. When, of course, the undertone is that if you didn't do it, you would be in serious trouble. We can unelect you just as quickly as we can elect you. And is that agreeable to you? And Mr. Trump, I'm just making this up, of course, but this is how I figured out why they spent a whole day during the campaign. And I'm sure Trump or somebody else in that same capacity would have said, well, yes, I think that's fair. And if you can get me in the White House, then, and that's all you want from me, and that's all we want. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, that's enough. And then, of course, once you're in the trap, you know that that's not all they want. And so, all right, having said that, I believe that most of the presidents of the United States for a long, long time, ever since Woodrow Wilson, starting with Woodrow Wilson at least, have been confronted with a scenario somewhat similar to that, where they knew that they were being offered a good shot at becoming president by the powers that be, the hidden powers that the public doesn't see so often, and they struck a deal, and they had to keep the deal. So that doesn't mean they were happy about it, but they also knew that they struck a deal, and they had to do it. And of course, then if you didn't do it, the jackals could be called out, and you could wind up losing your life quite easily, like JFK did. So that's another story, but I think JFK didn't keep up with one of his deals, which he made with the mafia, and he decided to go after the mafia after the mafia delivered a vote in some of the big cities to him, and that was you don't go back on your word with the mafia. So anyway, these are things that are on my mind, and mind you, this is just my opinion. This is how I see it, because I know that's how the world really works, and we'd like to think, well, it works for everybody else, but not here in America. It doesn't work that way, and not with this guy, because I liked him. I voted for him. Oh, I voted for him, so he can't be a crook. I wouldn't vote for a crook, right? Would I? So I voted for him. He's a good guy. That's what we're dealing with, in my opinion.
I hear you. I get in a little, I wouldn't say trouble, but I try to be critically thinking, and certain people that pop up out of nowhere and start saying things that I agree with, I try to give them good interviews and be a little skeptical, but not everyone is that way. There's definitely a lot of party spirit and left versus right. Don't say that to me, because I think we're going to beat them this time. And I'm at the point you're at, let's just put it that way, where I'm not taking any of it too seriously. There's a lot we could talk about with that, but I wanted to ask a question. At 92 years young, smart, wise, on it, seem like you're full of energy. What is the biggest lie that we've been told to live a long and healthy life? Because you are doing that. So that's my question.
Oh, you really want to get me deep into trouble, don't you?
You'll get me in trouble too on my stream. It's on Facebook and YouTube, but I'd rather have the historical context of what you really believe. I'll take the financial loss. It's okay, rather than censorship.
Well, it's not so unpopular to say what I'm about to say anymore, because more and more people are seeing it as a result of this COVID theater. But the answer to your question is the biggest lie in my lifetime in that field, the field of health and longevity, is that the pharmaceutical industry has your best health interests at heart. That they are doing everything they can to devise procedures and drugs and excuse me, and techniques that are going to prolong your life and improve your health. I have now come to the point, beyond any shadow of a doubt, that that's the biggest lie that you could possibly find anywhere in history. The pharmaceutical industry was born, as we know it today, was born in, I guess the year would be about 1910 to 1913, the same period, by the way, that the Federal Reserve System was born, and pretty much by the same people. It was the Rockefellers had invested quite heavily into the pharmaceutical industry, and they had done so as a result of their uh, companionship and their partnership with some of the German cartels during World War II. Those cartels were established across the border, and American companies and German companies collaborated with each other rather in secret because it wouldn't go over too well with the American parents of soldiers who were getting killed by Nazi troops to know that their corporate leaders were cooperating with the manufacturers in Nazi Germany to produce tanks and guns and bombs to kill their sons. But they were, and that's another story. I tend to get sidetracked because each leg of the story is interesting, but I just hope your viewers will accept the fact that the evidence is so overwhelmingly strong that the World War II was pretty much a farce too. It wasn't for any of the purposes that we thought it was. But anyway, out of this collaboration between the German IG Farben cartel, it was called. IG Farben was Interessengemeinschaft Farbindustrie. And that's translated roughly, it means community of interests. And that means a cartel. The American word for that would be a cartel. And so almost all of big industry in Germany prior to and during the Nazi regime was cartelized. And that cartel reached out and formed a partnership with the Americans who were just beginning to create cartels here in America. And the pharmaceutical industry was one of the first. The very first, of course, was oil. Um, the American side had a great deal of technology on oil through Standard Oil of New Jersey, and that was the Rockefeller Group. And the Farben cartel was way ahead in terms of other chemistries. They started off as producing dyes for clothes. That's how the whole chemical industry began. But they soon branched into armaments and warfare, and it was pretty brilliant when you think about it, because the two things that people will pay any amount for, regardless of prices, their health or to win a war, not to be destroyed by a war. So Farben put his feet down, or their feet down, in both camps, and they were able to make tremendous profits by producing war products to win wars and health products to save lives. You kill them on one side and save them on the other. And the prices were never challenged. That's a little bit of the background. So anyway, the point of all this is that after the war, the Rockefellers invested quite heavily in the pharmaceutical industry, and not only here in America, but also over in Europe as well. And it became hard to distinguish where one left off and the other began. And the first thing they did after they consolidated that is to begin to finance the medical schools in America. That's a long story. It's in my book, World Without Cancer, the story of vitamin B17. But they decided they wanted to capture control of the medical profession. And they did so with the one thing they have in abundance, and that is money. By this time, Rockefeller was also involved in banking as well as oil. And so they had money. And so they hired this doctor by the name of Flexner, forgotten his first name right now. Anyway, Flexner. And he wrote a study. He traveled around the country and examined all the medical schools in America and produced the Flexner Report. Abraham was his first name, Abraham Flexner. And the Flexner Report it received a lot of publicity. It was considered in the halls of Congress. It was in all the newspapers. Flexner revealed the truth that everybody knew, and that is there was a lot of unsavory activity in the medical profession in those days. People were pretending to have expertise in medicine, which they did not have. And even those that had the medical expertise weren't very good at doing their job. They were killing people instead of saving people. And so the hue and cry went out, we need medical reform in America. Congress didn't come up with the money, and so Rockefeller did. And he began to go to all of these medical schools in America and offer them rather large sums of money for those days, a couple of $1 million in those days, 1910, 1913, 1914, big amount of money. And it wasn't difficult to literally load the boards of directors of these institutions with agents of the Rockefellers, because they'd say, well, Mr. President of the university or the school, we would like to support you, and we're willing to invest a significant amount of money, perhaps maybe $2 million. Does that interest you? Oh, of course. Yeah, it interests me a lot. Well, all we ask is, here's the same old story. All we ask is that when you get this money and you start to implement the reform, which you will determine, that you will consider our recommendations, and you will consider our suggestions for members of the board, just to sort of see how our money is being spent. We'd like to follow it. Does that be agreeable? They would agree to it. And it didn't take long before all of the medical institutions in America were funded generously by the Rockefellers. And in return, their boards of directors, they almost all had Flexner on their board of directors, and Flexner had a brother, and there was another character whose name I've forgotten. That these three all wound up on the boards of directors of all of these institutions. And between that and the promise of additional funding in the future, it was easy for the Rockefellers to determine the curricula in those schools. And the curricula was changed quickly and drastically to this: the study of and the cure of diseases from now on will be focused on the application of drugs. And that's because these companies that were owned by Rockefeller or invested by him and others in that category were all producing patentable drugs. They were not interested in anything from nature, because you cannot patent something from nature. But they would find something in nature that worked, and then they'll put their scientists to work and say, well, what is the component that's in there? If we can just imitate that and make it work a little bit, now we can patent it, because we will put our own fingerprints on it.
Right.
And that's how it all started. And I don't think it took more than 2 decades. And all of the medical students at these schools in America, now they go through there, and what do they learn? One thing only: for every disease or condition, the cure is a drug, or a drug. Doctors know practically nothing about basic nutrition, and they're the first to admit it, unless they pursue it on their own, but they don't get it in medical school. And so you go to your doctor, and I don't care whether it's a hangnail or a mental condition or whatever it is, you're going to walk out with a prescription for a drug. And those drugs are horribly expensive. The profit margins are they're obscene. And this is, now you ask me, what do I think about the intent of the healthcare system in America? The intent of the healthcare system, the business model, is simple. The business model is, you must never cure a disease. If you cure a disease, you lose your customer. That would be stupid to run a business where the goal of your business is to get rid of your customers. So you never cure the disease. What you need to do is perpetuate it, and put every American or everybody on the planet of the Earth, the surface of the planet, put them on drugs that they have to take every day for the rest of their lives just to function. So they keep paying you to supply them with these drugs, which don't cure anything, which keep them going, maybe hide their symptoms so that they don't feel the pain so much, but the condition remains and it makes them weak and sick. Now you can sell them more drugs for the conditions that sickness was producing, and that makes them more sick, and then you sell them more drugs to take care of those side effects. This is the business model of the medical establishment in America today. So that's my answer, and I don't care who says I'm not telling the truth. If they just open their eyes and take a look around, they'll see the truth is so evident.
Incredible. Agree. And at this point in your life, I'm sure people have questioned you and still question you. I could guarantee it. But at 92 years young, the proof is in the pudding. I wanted to ask you, we talked about it last time, and you said something about, I'm trying to think, trace minerals. And I got them immediately because you were talking about the benefit of trace minerals.
Oh my. Oh
and
boy.
I said, if G. Edwards says it, I'm on right now to get the best kinds I could get. With that being said, out of everybody in this world, and I know you're in your own space, but say whether it's journalism, film, authors, truthers, whatever you want to call it, you seem very calm. You seem very reasonable. And out of everybody that's made it to the level you've got, you seem the least attacky. Even when you explain the things going on, you're very thoughtful about it and you're weighing out all sides and you're not getting overly animated or like yelling. Is that a key to your life, or am I just overthinking it? Just being so, chill
Well,
about things.
I'm glad you said that about me because I have to control myself sometimes. I get revved up, as you can imagine. And my good wife is often on board to say, well, you could have calmed that down a little bit. And she's usually right. But actually, in addition to that, I do try to keep my cool. Because I do, like everybody, you get excited about these things. These people are out to kill you. They're out to make your life miserable, to make you sick. They're out there to steal everything you've earned to create. They want it all. They want you to be a slave. How do you not get excited by that?
Right.
But it's true that if you let that go too far, you scare people because they think this guy's a maniac, and so I guess it's the old story of the war horse. The horses, the first time in battle, and they hear all the guns going off, they get spooked. But after they've been in battle a little while, they get used to it. Some of that is probably the case with me.
Why? I guess this is a tough question, and I'm going to do two parts because I want to hear both answers. The first one is, why don't you think everyone can see this? I saw it when I was 17, 18, because they tried to put me on pharmaceutical drugs, and my mother had a mind like yours, and she said, he doesn't need drugs, he just needs to pay attention. And it was true. That's why I was a bad kid. It had nothing to do with drugs. It just, I wanted to do something else, play sports, listen to music. I needed to be told no. Why do you think people can't see that? And then this other question is a little random, but someone asked what your favorite meal is, and I'm curious as well. So we'll start with why can't people see what's going on with the pharmaceutical industry, and then your favorite meal.
Well, I think they can see it, first of all. There's nothing stopping them from seeing it. The question really is, why don't they want to see it? They don't want to see it because that would mean that their whole life view would be shattered, because they've been raised as I was. I went through public school, and I was raised and conditioned to respect authority. It seemed like an honorable thing, respect your seniors. Well, that's true, but then it's a short step from respecting your seniors to respecting authority. Sounds like it's the same thing, but it's not the same thing, because in the real world, authorities are always associated with institutions that have great amounts of money at their disposal, and they have great influence over people. So we call that power, money and power. How many times have we heard that said? So these institutions are vaults of money and power, and that acts as a magnet for the predator class. And all of the suede shoe artists, all of the con artists in the world are attracted to those institutions. And they can be very, very good at convincing you that they are honorable, rational, religious people. Sometimes they have high ethics. They talk, always that way. And it's hard for the average person to realize that. Well, let me put it this way. I have never met a good con artist that I didn't trust. Otherwise, they wouldn't be a good con artist. And the very best of them wind up being at the tops of these institutions, which have a lot of money and power, and they wind up being the authorities. Now, if we're trained to respect authority and not question authority, it's a pretty bad situation to have, because that means the place that you're most apt to find people that do not have your best interest at heart, that's where you're being told to be respectful and obey them. So it starts off by saying that you have to question authority, and it's a mindset. And I didn't like making that transition because I had been conditioned to think that trusting authority and obeying authority was similar to revering your parents or the older folks and so forth. It's not the same at all. So the answer to your question, I think people do not want to question authority, primarily because they've been trained to not do so. And secondly, if they do so, they realize that much of what they believe is stable in their lives is fragile. In fact, it's all built, or most of it is built on lies and deception. And that's a horrible thought. It's very unnerving. And who wants that? So, and then on the third element, they say, gee, I wonder what NBC and CBS have to say on this, because there's another authority that we can trust. Let's see what the authorities say about authorities. And and of course, they get the opposite story pitched at them. So unless they get really, really concerned, and unless they have the capacity to put their emotions aside and look hard at the facts, they're going to be easy prey for the predators who are authorities. That's all. I think it's because they don't want to, but sooner or later they have to. And my hope is that it happens sooner than later, because we need all these good people actively pushing back. And
I think the phone's going off. Is it your cell or?
well, I removed the. You could hear that.
Yeah, I could hear it.
Oh, well, my phone rang and I forgot to disconnect it before, so I'm going to do that now, and so it won't. Okay, it won't ring again.
No worries.
Do that. So anyway, that's the answer. My answer to your first question. My absolute favorite food, other than Reese's chocolate-covered peanut butter cups, real meal. Well, let me think about that. I have to say, this doesn't sound very healthy, but it's not too bad. My wife makes the best goulash you have ever tasted in your life. Goulash. Many people don't even know what goulash is, but it's a very highly seasoned hamburger meat and some pasta. And the seasoning and the hamburger with onions in it and all that stuff, it's just my favorite. But I come from the Midwest, so I'm a meat and potatoes kid. But if some people have tried unsuccessfully to convert me over to a vegetarian or a vegan, and I'm very sympathetic to it, and I try it once in a while, and I eat a lot less red meat than I used to. Personally, I think that we all need to eat meat, although a lot of people would disagree with that. But I do also know that you can eat too much of it easily, especially the red meat, because I've learned the role or the balance between the pancreatic enzymes, the proteolytic enzymes, and the control for cancer. People who eat a lot of heavy red meat consume all of these pancreatic enzymes in the digestion of those proteins. And those are the very enzymes that are necessary in a natural anti-cancer process. So if you deplete all of that in the digestion of heavy red meat, you don't have anything left to do its anti-cancer function. So you can eat too much of that kind of meat, to be sure. But I think that we are carnivores, but not carnivores. I should say omnivores would be it. I think we're designed to eat a little bit of both, just not too much of any one thing.
And G. Edward has quite a few books, so check out his website. I'm going to plug it at the end, and just search his name, and you should be able to find. He's got books on health, books on the Federal Reserve, probably the most popular book in American history on that, or perhaps world history. I had a question. I try not to talk about people that much with you, because you're like I'd rather hear about concepts and just overarching themes. But I did want to ask one direct question where, I interviewed this guy. You've probably seen him. His name is Vivek Ramaswamy. He was a pharmaceutical CEO who turned into a Republican and ran as a president. And now he's really close to Trump. I found it fascinating after the whole COVID thing, and Trump called himself the father of the vaccine. He gave $18 billion to the pharmaceutical industry, and everybody was against that in the Trump world, but they didn't want to put any accountability on him. And then this CEO from the pharmaceutical world, who's a billionaire, pops up out of nowhere. I'm not saying he wasn't around, but he was no leader in our movement or anything. And all of a sudden he starts saying all these things, right? All the right things, right at the right time. I just wasn't feeling the authenticity of it. Not saying he's a bad guy. I just never believed it. And then I gave an interview. A lot of people liked it, but that's been one contentious thing, especially in conservative and truther debates, is like, they think that this father of the vaccine and the pharmaceutical CEO are going to come save the party after the lockdown. And I think that's insane to not at least challenge
Yeah.
these people a little bit more. What's
Yeah.
your read on all that? Because you said since Reagan, you haven't really been even slightly impressed by anybody.
Well, no, because I know how the system works. The system at present is totally in charge of these things. I don't think the elections are accurate. I know they have control over the ballot, how the votes are counted, and they make it sound like, oh, well, we're working on it, or oh, we had a problem, but we fixed it. But every time there's an election, you wind up this district after that district. There are more people that voted for the particular candidate that won than are even registered to vote. You know that the system is rigged, and they keep catching them on it, but no court will touch it because they know it's a hot potato, and they don't want to be, I don't know what, maybe they're
Sued?
being worried about shot or something. I don't know, but they don't want to be controversial. They want to be liked by everybody. And so anyway, back to the question, what do I think? Well, I think that when you're trying to evaluate a person as a leader, another authority, we're back to that again. This time you're going to vote an authority into office and give him great control over money and power. You're playing the same game. I mean, you're talking about people who want that money and power at their disposal. And give me a president or somebody that doesn't want to run for office. I want to build a movement, by the way, and I'm serious about this, where we select our candidates, and I'm guaranteeing you that most of our candidates will not want to run. These are not people that want to be in office. These are people that will be doing it because they feel that it's their obligation to do it. They're not in there for the aggrandizement, for the glory, or for the money and power. They're there because they love America. Now, I don't know about this fellow that you mentioned, but I do believe that if you're trying to evaluate especially a political figure, you have to look at their background. You can't just take what they say today or last week or even last year too seriously. But if you go back 10 years or 20 years, and most of these people have a track record, you'll find what they really are if you go back far enough. But people don't want to do that. They'll say, well, he's changed now, or she's changed now. Maybe, it's possible, but you should be aware that he or she was once that way, and they're not talking about it. And are they really changed? I don't know. But I'm just saying, question authority. That's one of my mantras, and I think you'll be a lot better ahead.
A little bit of discernment and skepticism would go a long way, right? Instead of the my team football style, like fan over politicians.
Yeah, they're like little children. They're so easily maneuvered by the experts, the propagandists. They know how to manipulate the mob.
I wanted to ask you, and the floor is yours for as long as you want. You could plug anything, tell people where to find you, what you're doing, but you're a passionate guy. You know a lot. I just wanted to open the floor to anything that's been really on your mind over the last year or so that you're super passionate about. You want to tell people. There's about 1,000 people watching now too, and more we'll see.
Well, yes, I guess there are several things that go whipping around inside my brain, but the one thing that perhaps is of most concern to me is that there seems to be a movement underway, is growing momentum that concerns me because it may neutralize people or prevent them from doing what they need to do. They need to become responsible and take charge and be active in politics themselves. They've got to get out of their homes, off of their couches, and go into the meeting halls where people gather and build a movement from the ground up. They got to get out of their houses and become leaders and influencers themselves. And I see this movement growing where I think they want to tamper that or damper that down. And the movement is that, hey, look how many people are awakening up. Isn't it wonderful? We're going to win. All we got to do now is just watch television and watch it win. They think that because so many people are waking up, that they don't have to do anything. It's over. Oh, thank God, I can continue my lifestyle the same way it was. That really worries me because I think here I go again. I'm skeptical because I know how the opposition works. That's my disadvantage in this matter because I see it clearly. The enemy wants us to be overly optimistic. They want us, well, I think that it was James Corbett that coined the phrase hopium. They take hopium. It's an addiction. Oh, well, we have great hope. Look at how many people are waking up. Oh, they're not going to win after all. So let's go watch Dancing with the Stars tonight. No, no, and no. It's wonderful that a lot of people are waking up, but don't ever think that that alone is going to solve the problem. Those people who are waking up have to now change their modus operandi toward this battle. Not just learn about it and read about it and keep up to date on it and all of that. That's important, but they got to get out of their homes and into organizations and recapture the system from the ground up. And that's why we built the campuses at Red Pill University for that purpose. Anybody that's interested in actually being boots on the ground to bring about the change that can happen with the approval of the large numbers of people. Remember that the change itself will be done by a very few people, but we need the large number to support it, but a few number to do it. I want more people to stop watching and applauding it and become the doers, because that's where we're short right now.
Appreciate you for coming on, my friend. And any links besides Red Pill University that you wanted to share with people where they could find? Because a lot of people were asking about supplements and all those sort of stuff.
Well, I don't make recommendations, but we provide information about the theories behind various items, different chemicals that are natural to it. For example, we did a webinar last night on a product that produces nitric oxide. Now, that doesn't mean anything to most people. Didn't mean much to me until I started taking it. Nitric oxide is produced by the body, by the way, but there's a certain combination of natural food products that stimulates the body to produce nitric oxide in their old age, because that natural production goes down as you get older. And nitric oxide is essential for cardiovascular health, and especially in this COVID era when people are getting all these blood clots and so forth. And that's usually a rupture in the blood vessel walls, the endothelium, they call it, the little thin wall on the inside of the blood vessel. It's only one cell thick, easy to rupture. And so the nitric oxide causes those vessels to be flexible, and they don't rupture so easily, and they rebuild the cells quickly after damage. And so you got to know what does that, though. I don't recommend any of these things, but I do bring people to the attention of the products that I use, and so that we do. If anybody wants to be on our mailing list, I'd be glad to have you come on. Just come to the best place to start is to order that booklet I mentioned before. That'll put you on the mailing list too. So
Right.
Go to realityzone.com/chasm, and you'll not only get the free download on that booklet on individualism versus collectivism, but you'll also be put on our mailing list, and you get our 3 times a week newsletter, needtoknow.news it's called, and all of our urgent messages and some not so urgent. And if you don't like what you see, well, you can just cancel anytime, and we won't send Guido out.
Thank you so much for coming on. And yeah, I just wanted to ask a few extra questions because the proof
Sure.
is in the pudding with you. I mean, always a pleasure. Favorite guest I've had. It's been the 3rd time, so I'm honored and grateful to have you on 3 times, and I'm sure you'll be on again. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I much appreciate it.
And you got my number now. Just shoot me a text or a call whenever. And that's been the Dream Rare Podcast. Thank you, G.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. God bless you guys, and I'll be back tomorrow. Hey, what's going on, my friends? Just a few ways to stay in touch and support if you'd like to. The first way is dreamrare.com. We have blue beanies, black beanies, pink hats, other colored hats, freedom versus tyranny shirts, stay blessed long sleeve, God is great long sleeve, and lots of more cool items coming soon. Dreamrare.com. Check out the shop to support. Everything's made in the United States. Handpicked by me. Patreon.com/raretalk for $5 a month. You can help support me, support the show. If you haven't noticed, unlike other channels, I don't work with very many sponsors, sometimes none at all. And part of the way I'm able to do that is with the dreamrare.com shop and patreon.com/raretalk. So thank you guys for keeping this show free, unimpeded, uninterrupted. I'm forever grateful. beautiful. My free email list is stayintouchwithme.com, so check the links below in the description or just type in on any browser stayintouchwithme.com, all one word. You'll find my email list, put it in there, and it's the least annoying email list you'll ever be on. I barely use it because I don't like getting emailed every day or every week. It's annoying, so I don't do it. Stayintouchwithme.com. It helps me take back some power away from big tech. Telegram, t.me/DreamRareChat or @DreamRareChat. Due to censorship, I post all my live stream and videos there. Sometimes I have some bonus content, and I try to give people a heads up when Facebook or YouTube won't. DreamRareChat at Telegram. My Instagram is @DreamRare. Thanks for everybody following there for shorter content. And DreamRareLinks.com, that's DreamRareLinks.com, has all my stuff. My podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, my music on Spotify and Apple, my Rumble page, my BitChute and Gab page. All my links are found at DreamRareLinks.com. Thanks for watching, folks. God bless you. You already know I'll be back with more content soon. Appreciate you.